The year is 2001. The Raiders are playing the Patriots in New England. They think they have a fumble, but due to the tuck rule, it is not ruled a fumble. So, was it the right call? Well, there's a lot of debate about it. It seems like the general consensus, though, is that it was the correct call, although it was a dumb rule. It was just a stupid rule they had in the rule book called the tuck rule, and that's why the Raiders lost. But that's actually not exactly the case. I mean, there's a lot of debate that it was even implemented correctly, and I think it's very interesting. I think there's plenty of things that Raiders fans will bring up that are very valid points. I also think that with all this information, I have a different opinion than I think everyone else does, and I'll get into that in a second. But to really understand what I'm talking about with this video, first we have to understand what the exact rule is. What are the wordage in the rules? And so it's this. NFL Rule 3, Section 22, Article 2, Note 2. When an offensive player is holding the ball to pass it forward, any intentional movement of his arm starts a forward pass, even if the player loses possession of the ball as he is attempting to tuck it back towards his body. That's the important part. Also, if the player has tucked the ball back into his body, then loses possession, it is a fumble. So to make things easier, I brought out my trusty Nerf football to explain how this works. I'm going to have to try and throw left-handed because of how my microphone is pointed, so this might be tricky. But, let's just say I'm starting to throw the ball. Again, don't make fun of my form, throwing left-handed. So I start to throw the ball. At this point, if the ball gets knocked out here, it's not a fumble, it's an incomplete pass. If the ball gets knocked out here, it's not a fumble, it's an incomplete pass. And if I start to say, you know what, don't want to throw it there, let me tuck it back towards my body. At this point, if I stop, it is an incomplete pass. Not until my other hand gets onto this and I have both hands on the ball is it now able to be a fumble again if I lose possession. And it doesn't even have to be knocked out. It can just be if you lose it in general. Many Patriots fans will tell you that, listen, this whole tuck rule thing is overblown. I mean, we actually had that call go against us earlier in the season. But that's not actually true. They didn't have it go against them once earlier this season. It was twice earlier in the season they had it go against them. The second of which I'll show first. It's going to be this one, where it's against Carolina, and you're going to notice that the opposing quarterback, he takes the snap, and he just slips the ball out as he's trying to tuck it back away. He starts to throw, then slips it back. It is ruled an incomplete pass. It is not ruled a fumble. I'll slow it down so you can get a better idea, but as you see, he starts to throw, decides not to, but as he's trying to get it back into his other hand, he loses possession, the ball slips out. It is not a fumble, it is an incomplete pass. Now, this didn't matter. This was a blowout game that the Patriots won. The other one, that's another interesting one that people talk about, is going to be against the Jets. As you see, as he's starting to throw, arm hits the hand, ball flies out. This one is actually a little bit more difficult, I think, to really say that this is a bad call or even like a bad rule for the call. It seems like it's pretty fair to say his arm was going forward. You can maybe even make an argument that in the rules today, that shouldn't be a fumble, although I think it would be a fumble today, but that one's not quite as bad. That was in a game that the Patriots also would, they would actually go on to lose that game 7-3, but it seems unlikely, even if they got that fumble, that they would have won, and they still would have had the number 2 seed, whether they got an extra win or not, so it's kind of a moot point. The main reason this rule was implemented in the first place is that the NFL wanted to have some hard and fast rules for why they would do things. They wanted everything to be black and white. They didn't want any judgment calls because they wanted, when the exact same situation happens in 2 different games, they get called the exact same way. But in doing this, it creates some problems. I mean, honestly, the fumble rules now when a quarterback is getting hit as it's thrown, every now and then you will see one where you're like, how did they rule that a fumble? But with the tuck rule, the idea was they wouldn't have that problem, and you would always have a black and white, this is a fumble, this is not a fumble. Of course, as we know, that's not going to be the case because one of the most controversial calls ever is because of this rule. But let's show another example of a tuck rule. New Orleans Saints quarterback starts to throw, decides to tuck it back, and as he tries to get it back into his body, it slips out. It's ruled an incomplete pass, not a fumble. I mean, listen to the referee when he's giving the call. He even sounds like he just can't believe that this was ruled an incomplete pass instead of a fumble.
After reviewing the play, By rule, when the quarterback's arm is going forward, it's a forward pass until he gets the ball tucked all the way into his chest. The quarterback did not get the ball all the way back into his chest, so it is an incomplete pass.
It was a stupid rule, but I don't think anyone really denies that. I think we all agree that, thank God, it is no longer a rule in the rule book. It was a mistake. I understand the logic of why they did it, but it was just a bad idea, and it's a good thing they've scrapped it. But the question still remains, was it implemented correctly in that 2001 divisional round game in New England, in the Snow Bowl, whatever you want to call it? And well, I have to be honest, there's some evidence on the Raiders' side that's pretty damning. Like, watch, we'll just show the play, where you see Woodson, he's running to Brady, and right before he gets the ball out of Brady's hands, you notice that Brady has the ball in his hands. Again, I'm not saying hand here, I am saying hands. He has it in both of them. His other hand is clearly on the ball, and if you look at Woodson's arm right over there, that arm is about to knock the ball out. So therefore, clearly, Brady had tucked it, then the ball got knocked out, making it an improper use of the tuck rule, right? I mean, that has to be the reasoning. Like, watch this still image, it's in higher res, so you can see it a little bit better. I mean, you can clearly see both hands are on the ball. There's no question about it. Both of Brady's hands are on the ball. Woodson's hand is still up there. So, I mean, just looking at it, it seems pretty logical to think that this was the wrong call. They shouldn't have overturned it. However, Patriots fans who have already hit the downvote button, bear with me, because there's more information that we have to bring up here. Like, watch this angle, where Woodson is going from, it's behind Woodson and Brady. I want to pause it right here, and as you notice, Woodson's left arm is clearly on Brady's back. That's really why I'm showing you this angle. You can clearly see that Woodson only has one arm that is in front that can potentially hit Brady. Now let's cut back and show the second part of the play again, where I'll go right here, and if you notice, Woodson doesn't actually knock the ball out of Brady's hands. Brady loses the ball before Woodson swipes down. It's just before, but as you clearly see, that is what happened there. So, I mean, you might be saying, so what? There's a very logical chance that the reason why that happened was because Charles Woodson was just, swiping down. He hit Brady's arm. That's what caused the ball to fall out. And that's possible. I'm not going to sit here and say that's not possible, but it seems far more likely that something else happened. Let me show the play in full again. Watch the exact second that Brady loses the ball. It's essentially right when his left hand, touches the ball. I have sort of a conspiracy theory about this. So again, we'll go back to the trusty Nerf ball for this, and what's going to happen is that, so the game was very cold. It was a very cold game, obviously. From what I understand, it wasn't like 0 degrees out. I think it was actually like high 20s, so it wasn't actually that bad, but there was a lot of snow, and it's still pretty cold, so it seems reasonable to assume that Brady's hands might have been cold and might not have had the same grip strength as he typically does. And so when he goes like this to pump it back, I actually think that the point that he loses it, and the reason he loses it, isn't because of Woodson. I mean, it's partially because, he got hit a little bit, maybe his grip is off, but I actually think when he really lost it was when he hit it with his other hand. I think he went like this, and that's what caused it to fall. Now, you might be saying that's crazy, but it actually really isn't. I mean, watch it again. You're going to notice that really what happens is that he loses the ball right when his hand touches the ball. I think a real reason why I believe this way is also look at where the ball falls down. Look at the direction that the ball falls down. If Woodson was the one who knocked it out, there's a very high likelihood that the ball would have gone to the opposite side of Woodson. However, you clearly see that the ball falls on to where Woodson was. I think that Brady just lost the ball with his hand. So what does that mean? Again, I'm going to have to go back to what the original rule stated. When an offensive player is holding the ball to pass it forward, any intentional movement forward of his arm starts a forward pass, even if the player loses possession of the ball as he is attempting to tuck it back towards his body. So, is that a tuck? At what point is the tuck complete? It's kind of not an easy question to answer. I mean, it seems like the clear thing is that when both hands are on the ball, it's a tuck, but is it really if you lose it as your second hand is what's knocking it out? If you went like this and your second hand knocked the ball out, you lose possession, is that now going to be considered a tuck, or is it not? I think no. My answer would be no. The reason why I think no is because if you think about it, when you had to maintain possession of the ball all the way throughout the process of going to the ground, that was obviously a rule for many years. If you lost the ball right as you hit the ground, it was ruled incomplete. And so I think for, using that logic to this rule, again, not even a well-written rule and didn't even do a great job at getting rid of gray areas. Just a bad rule. We all agree with that. But I think that if you tried to put your other hand on it, that's what caused it to get dislodged and you lost it. I think that that's not a tuck, meaning that the tuck rule was correctly implemented in this case. But remember, I said I think. The other thing we have to go back and look at is instant replay and the wordage of instant replay. Because keep in mind, this was not called on the field tuck rule. This was called a fumble. This was not called an incomplete pass. So they have to have what is said in the rule book as incontrovertible visual evidence. It's essentially like you're trying to convict somebody guilty in a court system. You have to have 100% proof that that's what happened. And I don't think they had 100% proof. I don't think this call should have been overturned. From the time they announced that it was going to go to instant replay to the time the entire play was overturned, only took 2 minutes and 4 seconds. Literally, and I'm including the time it took from the refs to walk back and announce everything. 2 minutes and 4 seconds. That is not a lot of time at all. Certainly not a lot of time to see what happened. And I think the reason why they called it this way is because, again, I'll show it one more time. It looks like Charles Woodson was the one who knocked it out when he put his arm like that. And because it looked like that, Woodson got there significantly earlier than what actually happened. As we know, Woodson had made contact for almost I don't know how long it was, but for a significant amount of time before Brady lost the football. However, when you watch it in real time, it does kind of look like Brady lost the football the second that Woodson hit him, which isn't true. And by that, it would mean that Brady did not have the ball close to his second hand, and it would have been a fumble. And I think that's why it ended up getting called that way. That's what I think. Personally, my stance on this is that I do believe that Brady probably he didn't have it tucked. He lost the football as he was trying to tuck it, and that's what caused the fumble. I think his own hand caused the fumble. I don't think it was Woodson. That being said, I just don't think there was enough evidence to overturn it. I think they should have gone with what they called on the field. Now, I think Patriots fans will be saying, well, who cares? I mean, back in 1776, there was a very weak roughing the passer penalty that kept the Raiders alive on a 3rd and 18. It gave them a first down in a game that they would go on to win by 3 points when they would score a touchdown on that drive, which was late in the fourth quarter to give them the lead. If that doesn't happen, they almost certainly lose the game, and that was also in a divisional round matchup where the winner played in the AFC Championship game, and that very much, it's exactly the same situation, really. So it kind of is very interesting. I think it's a good point. Why do we care so much about this call when there's been countless missed calls in the past, couple decades or even longer? I would say that the real reason is obvious, that it happened against the Patriots. So, of course, we care more about this than we do about these other ones. I mean, why would we care more about a game involving when the Buccaneers lost to the Rams due to the Burt Emanuel catch? Well, people don't care about that as much because the Rams didn't go on to win 6 Super Bowls in that era. If they did, people probably would bring that up a lot more than the tuck rule game. It's just the optics of it, I think. But I also think it's very fascinating. Well, I do think that, I've given my opinion on it. I still do stand by, at the end of the day, luck's a part of football. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky. I don't believe it was rigged. And why do some people believe it was rigged? Well, because Al Davis believes it was rigged. I mean, listen to him right here.
To this day, we don't know what happened. We don't know who made the call, what was said amongst the replay guy upstairs and the official downstairs. I don't know who else was in the booth. I know of things that were done with the networks. I know that the head of officials is still out there trying to spin it that we had a tuck rule and that was really not a fumble. I mean, it's ridiculous.
In fairness, I think Al Davis just, was a little bit paranoid about it. He was someone who constantly would, say that the refs were out to get him. And they had a couple of bad calls go against them. Famously, the immaculate reception was, I think pretty clearly not the correct call, but, it went against him. So that was a big reason. Part of why. And so then when there already is this, an owner saying that the refs are out to get him, the league is out to get him, and then a very unusual call goes against him, I think then it adds fuel to the fire, but I just don't see it. I don't think that they would care that much. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't know, but that's just my opinion, and I'm going to have to see evidence before I say that the league is rigged. That's just kind of where I stand on it, and bad calls do not equate to evidence. Before I end this video, I want to show one more thing, because I love this one thing that I found doing research for this video. It's fantastic. So it happens right when the call is given. The referee, he gives the call. He says, Tom Brady's arm was moving forward, therefore it is an incomplete pass. Which, by the way, isn't even what happened. I mean, I think we can all agree that makes no sense. His arm was not moving forward. And again, I think the reason why they say that is because they thought that right when Woodson hit him was when he lost the football, which is why they called it that way. So either way, they don't know what's going on. Whether it was the right call or wrong call, the refs didn't know what was going on there. But that's not what I find fantastic about this. I want you to watch Bill Belichick's reaction during this. Watch how he throws his hands up, almost as if to say, what are these guys doing? He's like almost annoyed that he got the call. I think even, whether he actually saw the replay or he didn't or what, it looks like he's just frustrated about what happened and about the call going that way. He has said since then that once he saw the replay, he thought there was a very good chance they were going to get the ball back. But I mean, he also totally could have been lying. I mean, I would lie in that situation, so that's possible as well. But yeah, I just think it's such an interesting call, and it's just fun. I mean, I think one of the real reasons why we care so much also is just the what if factor, I mean, Brady never gets that drive at the end of the Super Bowl in 2001 against the Rams where he gets the victory, where, John Madden says play for overtime, they don't, and win it because of it. Adam Vinatieri certainly isn't remembered the same way. I mean, he really has 3 main kicks that everyone remembers. You could argue 4, and if you do argue 4, 3 of them would be in this playoff run. Obviously, his 45-yard field goal in the snow. He also had the overtime winner, and then he had the field goal that won the game in the Super Bowl. And then obviously the one that wouldn't get taken away was his Super Bowl winner later, unless some crazy thing happened that stopped the Patriots from getting to the Super Bowl, but that does kind of seem unlikely. Also, one fun fact about Vinatieri, he had missed 4 out of his last 5 field goals from 40 to 49 yards prior to that, one of the, in my opinion, the best kick ever, his 45-yarder in the snow, against the snow, where he knew he couldn't get enough leg on it if he kicked it up, so he had to kick like light line drive, ties the game. I mean, that was, one of the best kicks ever. So yeah, I kind of rambled on here at the end for a second, but what do you guys think of the tuck rule? Do you think that it was I think we all agree it was a dumb rule. Maybe some of you don't. But also, do you think it was called correctly and implemented correctly and it should have been incomplete? Or do you think that even with the tuck rule, the Raiders got screwed? I honestly see both sides. And so my stance is that I don't think it should have been overturned. But I do think that it probably was a incomplete pass due to the rules. And it just was a dumb rule. That's kind of where I stand. And also, I don't care that much, if I'm just being honest. I find it fascinating, but that's really all I'm making the video about, is just because I find it interesting. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.